Hello, today is April 25th, 2018. This is the kubeadm office hours, and we don't we have some thorny stuff on the agenda. So Lee had written it down. We have one cherry pick that we're pending on to go backwards. Lee, you want to start to kick off the conversation? I'm sure we're going to kind of sprawl from there.
Yeah, so I it just caught me by surprise that in addition to not being able to upgrade uh, to a 1.9 version with the 1.10 binary, we also cannot downgrade from 1.10 to 1.9. And just wanted to make sure that this was intentional and known about because it's technically like another regression in behavior that I don't think we really talked about. And after going over it in Slack, it does seem like with what we have currently in the cherry pick, it is a technical limitation. So definitely open to hear ideas and or just say no on this. You know?
I'm okay with the copying of the problem is the mutation of the config doesn't have a backwards mutator, right? But it's kind of broader than that, in that I don't think downgrades in general are kind of a supportable thing once we start to getting to high availability. We were just having a conversation about this a second ago, without a full backup and restore utility. The reason why kubeadm gets away with it is because it literally copies the entire etcd directory over and then restores that etcd directory for a local installation. And once you get to an HA, you cannot downgrade, period, because you can't. That copying backwards would not work because of how the cluster is operating. So there's a bunch of. I don't think it's a supportable thing that we should be doing. Instead, we should punt to other tooling or other processes and policies about, like, before you upgrade, make sure you do X, Y, Z. That's my personal take on it. But I do recognize that will alienate some folks because it makes it much more cumbersome once you go from one node to a HA configuration.
Yeah, one thing is there was an issue that came up when Joe Beta did a TGIK about the backup dir disappearing. So I just linked a related issue in an additional bullet point about keeping the old manifests and potentially like the etcd backup and things like that around. Also, I guess we could probably put in a comment here about storing the old config and storing etcd.
So it does snap the directory as part of the upgrade.
And then it deletes it.
Yeah. If the upgrade was successful, yes.
Yeah. So you wouldn't be able to like roll back because of some other kind of layer 7 cluster issue.
Well, beyond that, the mutation of the API objects itself occurs on API server startup on the first access of any resource object inside of Kubernetes. That's the way the API machinery works. So if I did a list on an API server start because a controller restarted on an upgrade, right? So it was listing all the resources. If there was any mutation of any object, they would be mutated forwards, and there is no backwards compatibility mutate backwards. Right? It doesn't.
Yeah, except for basically having a data loss kind of event where you restore an older etcd backup.
Yes, I mean that's the kind of the thing I'm trying to punt to is, like, we're doing some janky things that I don't think fit into the space of kubeadm proper, and we should punt those janky things out, and we should almost say, like, use backup and restore utilities.
Yeah, I feel you on that.
We definitely don't want to stop supporting upgrades. And so these sorts of mechanisms for, hey, what happens if an upgrade fails halfway through is something that we're going to need to keep thinking about, I think. But downgrades are, I agree with Tim. I think they were always wishful thinking.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm getting at is that we already have an existing rollback mechanism that is best effort. And so it seems, like it doesn't seem infeasible, to basically just not delete those directories and then like provide a simple interface to actually rerun the rollback,
I think that the problem there is that, what if we keep that backup of the directory, but somebody tries to downgrade a week later, they're going to lose everything they've done to that cluster in the last week, right? And I don't think that's obvious.
Yeah, and that only works under one condition, which is the single node deployment, right? Once you get to HA, you're totally hosed. You cannot restore a snapped backup directory of a local copy across a partial version upgrade. The objects mutate internally across the cluster.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to solve for that, but sure would be nice to, like, in the event of a failure scenario, even if somebody's running an HA cluster with every bell and whistle enabled, to like provide them the breadcrumbs that are necessary so that their unhappy path isn't so miserable.
Well, the breadcrumbs for me is like, we built a tool for this. It's called Arc. I don't want to plug too much there, but there are other people that have built similar. There's other processes that are even documented for OpenShift for how to recover in those environments using etcd backups, right? So like you can basically link to, like, you should be doing these separate backups before you even begin. Like, this is the upgrade process and procedure. Instead of us trying to maintain this janky thing, which is, it only works under one condition, and it's kind of weird. We should say, like, before you begin, you should probably look at these tools and make sure you do a snap and put it in squirrel it away for some other, for a rainy day.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we should not do that. And I would even be for recommending tools, like providing documentation in kubeadm upgrade apply or kubeadm upgrade plan would be a great place for that.
Yeah.
I don't think that invalidates the fact that, like, our tool should, because the scope of kubeadm is particular to the configuration of the control plane and to a limited scope, the etcd that you may or may not be running with it. And so it is in scope, I think, for kubeadm to at least store what it did beforehand, so that when something does go wrong, which it will for many people as the tool continues to be used, that, like, the tool takes the opportunity to do something nice for them.
Yeah, I think before it starts, right, in the very initial phases of the upgrade plan, I'd have to take a look at what phase is the precursor in the very beginning of upgrade, to squirrel the data away, right? Locally, right? Like, to have, and even to have it well defined, it seems like a reasonable thing, right?
Yeah, it almost even seems like, I mean, right now it's not really a phase that you could break out because it's all intermingled in the upgrade code, but, like, it's a very simple modification to just define a backup dir and not delete it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you could probably even, like, have that code, the code that does the deletion, just, crib it out for the time being, right? It doesn't need to do the deletion. You could just keep on copying, right?
That's
You
exactly
even
what
have a config option that's just like, do delete true.
Yeah, I mean, that could be useful for somebody with very limited space or whatever. Although,
Notice I said configuration, not command line flag, Tim.
Yay!
yeah, I mean, it just seems like a sensible thing that we could do, for people, is not delete the old copy of their cluster configuration.
The problem here we have is time. I absolutely think we need to get your patch, your cherry pick, into 110, right? But we will be in this time window horizon of having this potential downgrade problem.
Yeah, I mean, if I guess like the important thing is that we document or like make known that the 1.9 binary, like if you maybe run the static pod control plane thing, or I don't know if we just add like a format, like a print statement to the upgrade plan where we say, hey, you know, like downgrading from 110 to 1.9 is no longer supported, so please back up your manifests. I mean, like,
You could even do that in the release note. So like the release note for your cherry pick should basically, we should have been on Liz's cherry pick originally, but it's too late now. But if you put a release note on your cherry pick, it will show up in the general release notes for this thing, and it will be there for all eternity. That'll be the
okay.
first stage. And then I think the second stage will be like, we need an issue and a doc fix for both of these things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the downgrade process is even documented anywhere, so I would be interested to see if that's actually like written in stone.
I'm pretty against downgrades now. The more I think about it, the more, especially as we tread towards HA, it's a very thorny thing.
Yeah, I mean, it happens to just kind of be something that has worked up to this point, and I don't even know what the state of it is with the feature flag struct,
Um,
because it like seemed to be working.
it
But
does work because of this condition, right? Like this local environment of having a self-hosted etcd as part of what you're deploying. But if as soon as you break out that etcd, or um, as soon as you get HA, it all falls apart. So
Isn't this just classic software development? It worked by accident for a long time, and now we're not really sure how.
it is. This is exactly that scenario.
yeah, I mean, well, we had a lot of that stuff this for this cherry pick cycle.
We did.
Yeah, Jason and I ran into all kinds of very strange bugs with the upgrade where it's like, wow, how did this ever work? Um, but same thing as well. The etcd rollback actually was non-functional. It was guaranteed to error out anytime the etcd upgrade failed. And so
So
that's now fixed. But
so how does this sound as a path forward? Add a release note that outlines the constraints that we have to your cherry pick. We'll get that thing merged as soon as possible, and then open an issue with regards to our, eliminating downgrade, and issue to also document the process for upgrades much more rigorously.
that sounds pretty fine to me. Yeah.
I'll open it up for comment there because this will affect everybody. So we should tread with caution. Everyone's happy. This is hunky dory.
What could possibly go wrong?
What you're looking on opinions for?
So that what I'll do is after you get the constraint written into the release note for the issue, I'll merge that like right after this meeting. Is that okay with you, Lee?
Yeah, I'll update the release now.
Okay. And then I'll open up an issue too with regards to downgrade. That's the only topic we have written in the notes. Are there other things that folks want to discuss?
Tim, you're
Same.
Sorry, I'll say it again. Are there other things that folks wanted to discuss?
I mean, I put up a PR this morning with the 110 conformance results for the CNCF conformance repo. Tim, I know that you've been lightly involved with some of the Sonobuoy stuff, so I don't know if you have any concerns there, but yeah, I put up that and maybe it's good to go.
Okay, it should be. We've already tested 110, I believe. Nope, I don't know if we have tested 110 yet.
Yeah, I know that there's like an Ubuntu distribution like already merged and like 2 or 3 others. So assuming they didn't do anything that they didn't document, I think it'll be good to go.
Okay, I'll take a look at it and then
Okay.
thumbs up it.
Cool.
Were there other agenda items that folks wanted to discuss?
I have my very initial pass at some E2E tests that I wrote. That's up for merge right now, and I have a merge request in kubetest to provide a runner for it. I'm getting some pushback about people who don't think that it's quite a candidate for inclusion in kubetest. So if I can link that PR and people can either back me up or turn against me.
Sorry, Liz, I missed what the runner was actually for.
I wrote some kubeadm focused E2E tests that I've added to, that I have a PR open to add to Kate's.
Cool. Okay.
One thing I did want to discuss, because we don't have all the automation in place and we want to get it fixed in the 1.11 cycle. One thing I wanted to open up an issue about to discuss is to have a well-defined test plan that any person within the SIG could execute and give feedback to. Because without that test plan, we're like, you're stumbling across things, Lee, that we should have written down and be able to execute pretty easily. And if we have that test plan written down, we can have it automatable, at least some of the pieces automatable with the E2E tests that we're creating. At least semi-automatable, not necessarily from the project down, but from a local dev setup.
Yeah, that would be very appreciated. I've been using a lot of shell scripts to compare different binaries. Well, that's one thing that is a little strange is the upgrade test does depend on a binary like from the previous release, basically. So
it does, and it's not just any binary from a previous release. It's a cross-built weirdo binary that's not being maintained. So I need to actually get it to the fix or hack I was going to get to try and fix that problem was to just use the full release binary and not the cross-build product stuff that was initially added. And I think my supposition was that Lucas added that to ensure that people were producing all of the proper artifacts as part of the release. And from what I can tell, they are not.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in the end-to-end tests that we have currently, I guess that's what's being depended on. I don't honestly know how to run those locally, so.
That's part of, I think, the reason for Liz's work, right, is to be able to have a single binary that we can execute locally that anybody should be able to run as part of their local build environment to validate it. And if we have a document and to go along with it for the test plan, I think that's even better.
Oh, I have a point to bring up on this as well. But as soon as you said documentation, I got like triggered. But yeah, just as long as we work all of this out, maybe we can move on to what I want to bring up.
Liz, do you have other things you want to talk about with the test stuff? If you could put links in the document, that would help.
Oh yeah, I put them in Slack, but I'll copy them to the document as well. I think that's the major thing for the test. I would love to get to the point where we could use either kubetest or Kubernetes Anywhere or something to stand up the actual tests and run a more proper EDE thing. Right now, it basically just verifies that after you've done kubeadm init and kubeadm join and stuff, that all of the artifacts we expect to be there still are. But there's definitely, like, most of the work that I did here was not writing the tests. It was getting the infrastructure and Jiggery in place to run a separate set of E2E tests. So if there are other tests that people want to add in the future, it should be very straightforward for them to do so.
Yep. Okay. I think we're back to you, Lee.
Yeah, I was just looking at the KubeCon schedule last night. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make it to this 2 o'clock Friday session, but we have a kubeadm specific session. And it seems kind of like geared towards like the deep dive kind of format where there's going to be potentially new contributors in the room, or, you know, a place where we can all get together and hack on existing issues. As part of the reviewer cohort, I was talking with Lucas and Peter about improving the documentation that we have, and it was kind of unanimous that like we should, if somebody has the cycles or gumption to do so. I have brought up this repo before, which is the Vagrant box that I use, and kind of the setup and scripts, like just very simple stuff that like gets somebody from 0 to 60. So, I mean, I don't know if that's like useful for this environment or if we should do anything else to prepare, but this might be a chance to like get more contributor cycles, more people introduced to the tooling that we have.
I think on the main repository for development, you can absolutely add some developer notes, like the main actual kubeadm repo. And I'd happy to merge anything at this point that gets people up to speed faster. And we can refine that over time. You know, I'm sure as people look at the repository, the kubeadm repo from the development perspective, that the main documentation should not have development docs, just in general, but the kubeadm repo can have whatever it wants. So if we outline one-to-end processes that people use, that's totally fine by me, and I think that would be absolutely helpful. I'm not going to recommend my process, but I think long-term, I do really want to get to the point where we have test Jiggery, which is part of the separate testing commons effort, to get basically an API that allows us to exercise and stand up automatically a multi-node kubeadm cluster of any sort in a local environment, whether it be DIND or some Minikube turducken environment, as Liz might say. I don't care, so long as it's like it has some basic requirements, is that the API is well defined, and I can specify a couple of major constraints around it.
Yeah, I think we already have plenty of resources for kind of like the ladder of development needs. So like what I've been primarily concerned about is that first rung is like, how do you get somebody from like, what is this Go file to like actually compiling the kubeadm binary and like running it and testing it. And then like there's all the other stuff that we could link to as well. So things like the Mirantis project, we could put that in there as like, hey, if you need, you know, X and X, you know, multi-cluster, multi-node things, then maybe you should look here. And yeah, okay, cool. Well, I can probably do that later this week.
If you want to PR the main kubeadm repo, I will happily merge with little resistance on anything.
Cool.
Help sunblock.
I mean, it's a very small repo that I have linked to there. Would we just merge the contents of it, or should we link out?
I would say merge the contents of it and then link out to other things if you want, if that's okay with you, obviously.
Yeah, that's totally fine with me. So, because I've noticed people have been forking already, so it'd be better if we just have a single place where we can all kind of scratch pad. And, cool. Okay, that's all I had. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing some of you folks out in Europe next week.
That's on Friday. 1 second here. Are you talking about the regular kubeadm deep dive with me and?
Yeah, which I unfortunately will not be able to make because I fly out at like 2. But
I'll be sure to drop notes about the, Patches welcome. Here are the high level details of some of the stuff we're working on, and here's how you can get involved.
What is planned for that session?
3 parts. One is like, here is the initial scope and history. Here is some of the things around HA self-hosting and upgrades. And here's how you do configuration for enterprise environments and some of the constraints around it. So it's a lot of content in a pretty short period of time.
Okay, cool. So that sounds like pretty information dense agenda, which means that it doesn't sound like it'll be like a workshop style thing.
No, not that one. We talked about having a separate workshop, and that wasn't part of the other discussion, but the only time we could get for a longer block was in the evenings.
Which are pretty booked with other festivities anyway, so.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I should be there for the SIG meeting, the cluster lifecycle meeting on like whatever it is, Wednesday or Thursday. So.
Okay.
I hope you all enjoy Europe.
Yeah, I wish it would be more enjoyable sometimes because conferences are pretty heavy.
Yeah, when I was out in Copenhagen for DockerCon last October, I had like 9 days. So it was like double the time to like actually enjoy. But I'm like flying out early this time, so it's kind of, yeah.
So are there any other agenda items? I know, Chuck, you were talking earlier if you had something that you wanted to bring up.
Oh, I was thinking about the idea of having a separate like command for HA kubeadm. I was wondering if we'd considered that because it seems like a lot of these various problems are like, are we doing an HA upgrade or an HA downgrade, which is not supporting, but like some things are supported for some environments and some things are not supported for some environments. So it might be one clean way to just have a separate command entirely.
That to me sounds like encoding similar information that would be previously proposed as like having explicit configuration structs for the different types of like etcd and the different types of upgrades. I think that that also encoding that information in separate phases and a separate command entry point is reasonable. I don't think that is a bad idea, and we should think about it.
Yeah, I think we need to enumerate the delta too about if we talk about upgrades. One thing that I kind of I introspect too much, and having the discrepancy of A versus B actually listed down would be super helpful, because we've identified key gaps that exist there. But if we actually had like, these are all the things that you do, sort of like, here's your upgrade plan. Here would be your upgrade plan if you did HA, and here's how it's different. That would be helpful.
Yeah. We got lots of proposals to write.
Yes, we do.
Gotta do something while y'all are off chatting.
So I think the big one to be coming soon will be like trying to define the config. I call it Grand Unified Config, but that's my own. If Liz wants to call it, Chicken Pony, it's a Pegasus, right? Chicken Pony.
That's pretty funny.
I have a kid who loves. I forgot what that series is. But that was a line from there. Anyways, if we want to call it something else, we can call it that. But that's probably going to be the big one that we have to rally around for 111, because the upgrade configuration nightmare was something that was unexpected.
Yeah, I would like to see some of the ideas that Chris kind of talked about in her book about having an infrastructure like state store where you're able to differ what's being requested versus what was previously requested. I don't know if you guys are following, but that includes things like timestamps and versions of like when the cluster configuration was previously changed, and things like the old configuration being accessible during the upgrade, so that you be able to differ between what is being requested. We found some need to do that, and we ended up having to look for state in other places like the old manifests. So that's something that like Jason and I kind of ran into, and I think the same kind of smell happened with the configuration struct issue. So that would be something that we should have on our radar, I think.
I agree. I think we've been bantering about it internally, and I think we need to put a proposal up there for folks to snipe at and find holes in. Are there any last questions, comments, complaints, concerns?
There's a question in the chat.
Now I want chips.
No, it looks like the
Happy hacker.
Yeah, Happy Hacker, about the audit params changing in 111. I'm not sure off the top of my head. So I would just
there's stuff that gets deprecated, and it's in the area of this pull request, and so I wasn't sure. One, my PRB against master or something else, and then is it a one-to-one mapping when we do a compile of kubeadm? Should it map precisely to the version of Kubernetes we're deploying?
Yeah, so to your last question, which is what version of kubeadm or what versions of Kubernetes does kubeadm support deploying? As of this release, we are only supporting the current minor version. So kubeadm 110y can upgrade to or install a new 110x or 110 anything cluster. Does that make sense?
Yep. And going forward, should we, if we start to get deprecations for other CLI parameters, we need to worry about downwards, right?
The CLI parameter should not be deprecated. We have to go through the formal process and policy for doing that. And even Peter we've been going back and forth on a couple of changes that he's proposed for, that we've long had for deprecating or moving command line args. So we need to follow the formal policy there. And that's actually documented somewhere in the community repo.
This wasn't for command line args for kubeadm. This was for command line args to API server. And so the API server args are changing. And
when is this deprecation happening? Sorry.
Let me find the link. I didn't commit it yet.
It's in the deprecation is targeted for 111 is what you're saying?
That's right. And so I'm in the midst of trying to commit. I don't know which command line args to use.
Okay, I'd have to dig through the details there.
Probably, yeah. I would probably target 111.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll loop in API machinery folks too on this issue.
And then the other fun thing, this was being able to debug when we're using a config file. You can't provide -v for verbosity when you provide a config file, and we're trying to debug issues can be a pain. So I added that.
That
For
should be
kubeadm.
that should be a separate PR. That's
Okay.
not. Yeah.
I'll
So yeah, for PRs against upstream,
Mhm.
eliminate all conflation. One PR for atomic feature. Right?
Okay.
Never for upstream. Never conflate PRs, just because it becomes very thorny. So,
Sure.
but that is highly useful, at least for the time being. We're gonna have to.
Yeah, we would totally welcome ownership of any of those changes to whatever level you're looking to help out. And if you need help ramping up on, any of compilation for that, then just let us know.
Thanks.
Do you know where so a lot of the kubeadm development stuff happens in the SIG cluster lifecycle Slack channel, if you're not already in there.
I'll jump in there.
Yeah, feel free to hop in and say hi to us. And anytime you have like a dev issue, there's always somebody in there. So
Thanks, Chuck.
Any last issues, topics to discuss? Going once, twice, 3 times. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye.